So thank you for joining us this evening for our career panel on building a startup in life sciences, hosted by the LifeSci NYC internship program. My name is Sabriya Karapetyan. I'm the career development manager, and I will be moderating today's career panel. To give you an overview, we will start with a quick program introduction, followed by introductions to today's panelists. Panelists will discuss their career path and offer advice for students on entrepreneurship in life sciences industry. The event will conclude with an opportunity for Q&A. And that's why at any time, feel free to write any questions you have on the chat, and we will answer them at the end of this discussion. And you will also have the opportunity to ask any questions out loud by using hand raise option on Zoom. And also this session will be recorded and the video link will be shared via email. Next slide, please. So, brief background of our program. The LifeSci NYC internship program is part of the New York City's Economic Development Corporation's 10 years, $1 billion initiative to grow the life sciences industry in NYC. The program offers paid internships and part-time and full-time job opportunities for both undergraduate and graduate students, as well as recent graduates in either science or business management roles. Since 2017, we have placed over 1,000 interns at many companies and organizations in NYC. And we currently have around 100 open internships as jobs, and with more coming all the time. This is a single location where you can complete one application per academic year and have access to job listings at multiple companies. So next slide. Thank you. So we created a series of career profiles that offer an overview of career options in life sciences industry. Each profile includes details about educational requirements, job responsibilities, desired skills and qualifications, as well as insights from professionals who are currently working in these roles. And in the next slide, we will specifically focus on business management, operations, and strategy roles. And as you can see, the top provides an overview followed by a list of everyday tasks and responsibilities. You can see who is hiring, list of skills and qualifications, our program alumni quotes. Our program also provides career development resources to New York City students. And here are some resources provided by our program that you can use while you are looking for new opportunities. On the right-hand side, you can see links to career profiles, resume and cover letter cheat sheet, professional letters cheat sheet. And on the other side, you can see details about our program, a link to our office hours with our placement team, as well as links to our social media to get updates about new job openings and career development events. Feel free to reach out to us via internships@upperweststrategies.com email. And I want to invite you to our Career Development Network LinkedIn group to learn more about our career resources, events, and also job openings in NYC, and contribute to our growing life sciences community. So feel free to join. The link is also in the chat. And now I would like to present our 3 guest panelists. Please welcome Ashley Abid, co-founder at Skinterest Tech. She is also program alumni 2019. We have Vladislav Sandler, co-founder and CEO at Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals. And we have Sabriya Stukes, partner at SOSV and Chief Scientific Officer at IndieBio. Thank you for joining us today, dear panelists. And to start with, could each of you briefly introduce yourself, current role, the company, and give a summary of your education and career path up to this point? Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Thank you.
I'm Vladislav Sandler. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals. My background is science. I was a scientist since I was about 14 years old. I did science in 1, 2, 3, 4 different countries over these years. Eventually I got my PhD in neurosciences from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver in Canada. Did my postdoc at Howard Hughes Medical Institute, Children's Hospital, and Harvard Medical School in Boston, then worked at Salk Institute, then came back to Harvard, eventually ended up on faculty of Weill Cornell here in New York. And in 2014, I started Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals. I co-founded Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals together with my wife, actually. We started it using our own money and then won the 43 North competition, which is considered to be the biggest in the world business competition. We won against about 7,000 companies all over the world, got our first money. And then I left my wife and my 6-month-old baby in New York, and I moved to Buffalo, New York, to start a tiny lab, to start the company, and the rest is history. So now we are a biotech company with a custom-built facility here in New York, in West Harlem. And we just opened our first phase 1 clinical trial for CAR-T for relapsed and refractory acute myeloid leukemia in adults. I think I will stop here because otherwise I will take all time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely amazing career path, what you've done from starting from zero, like building from your own money, right? And to clinical trials. It's very impressive. Oh, can we ask Sabriya?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sabriya, and just want to also say it's really nice to be in conversation with Vlad and Ashley. Actually, Ashley, who I've known for some time now, and Vlad, who I think I just met like 2 weeks ago at a kind of bio CEO mixer. So I've been living in New York now for 18 years, but my kind of educational and scientific experience really started maybe similarly around the same time as Vlad, when I was like 15 or 16, really fell in love with science. Knew I wanted to be in the lab, knew I wanted to kind of understand how on a molecular and cellular and microbial level, how things worked in the world. So I went to college at Virginia Tech, specialized in microbiology and immunology, really wanted to work on infectious diseases, actually. After I graduated college, I was able to secure a fellowship at the National Institute of Health, doing HIV research, which was very cool. So it wasn't necessarily like, I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Outbreak, like I wasn't, kind of like donning those big suits and like going out into the field, but I was working on HIV. I was working in a BSL-3 lab, which was, when I was 21, very interesting. I did that for about a year, and then I moved to New York a little bit on a whim, and we can chat about kind of how at least my decision-making process went in terms of making some big life changes. But I moved to New York, one-way ticket, and I got a job at NYU at the medical school. I did research for about 2 years in tuberculosis before going to grad school in the Bronx at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, again, all under the umbrella of understanding infectious diseases. After grad school, though, as many grad students have experienced, and there was a little bit of a lack of excitement, I guess, for actually being in the lab or continuing to be in the lab after so long. And I had the opportunity to join the City College of New York and help them build a brand new master's program in medical technology commercialization. I can go into more of that, but essentially what that looked like was saying like we need a new way of training scientists and engineers in the process of identifying big unmet needs, designing solutions for them, and then thinking about how do you actually commercialize that in a very like didactic and formal way. So I spent about 6 years doing that. So everything from recruiting students, teaching, mentoring, advising, working with other institutions at like a national level to really reimagine and rethink how are we training scientists and engineers, especially those who maybe didn't want to go the tenure track route or didn't want to work in big pharma, or maybe like didn't even know that starting a company or building tools and technologies that could have really large impacts in the world was an option that was available to them. I did that for about 6 years before then joining a small biotech company here in New York. We were developing therapeutics for neurological disorders. I joined as their founding operational director. I did that for a little over a year before joining SOSV, which is a fund where we invest in early stage human and planetary health companies. So essentially anything that has a molecular, scientific, biological, or engineering component to it and has the potential to be $1 billion business, we look to invest in. And so my role at the fund is identifying which companies we should make investments in. And then once we make those investments, really working with the founders at the earliest stages to help them achieve those scientific and technical, but also business milestones that other investors want to see. So they will put more money into the company. I can share more later, but I will just say, so I've been doing this for about 3 years and very excited about it.
Thank you very much for this amazing contribution to NYC, I can say, LifeSci industry, and what you're doing, the supporting the early stage startups. It's really important. Thank you for that. Ashley, do you want to also introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Abid, and I'm a co-founder of Skinterest, where we create digital solutions to help people with chronic skin conditions better manage their care. And I guess starting with my educational journey, I'll kind of start off from like my senior year of college, because around that point I was originally pre-med, but I couldn't shake off this interest that I had about the intersection of health and technology. And actually, this is where my path crosses with Dr. Sabriya Stukes, because I went to an info session for the Masters in Translational Medicine, or abbreviated as MTM program, which hit a lot of the things that I was interested in regarding, healthcare and technology in the life sciences industry, which I really credit MTM a lot for teaching me about the know-how for the life sciences industry, and also how technologies, as Dr. Stukes was talking about earlier, how it's commercialized in life sciences. So fast forward to me being part of the MTM program, I learned so much, and I think that is one of the main kind of impetus for me even venturing into entrepreneurship, because it really gave me a lot of knowledge, and also my mentors were a huge help in terms of feeling confident in our journey for pursuing entrepreneurship. And MTM also gave us an opportunity to actually engage with stakeholders from companies like Galderma, who gave us an opportunity to work on what they called as a biodesign project to try to create a solution for an unmet need. And well, that's the whole journey with how Skinterest essentially came to be formed. That's kind of like our origin story. I also got to meet my co-founder through MTM, and I think that's one of the things that I would say, like, when you're whatever path you're pursuing, you might not necessarily have all the answers, and I think that's okay. It's okay to question yourself, and just the people that you meet along the way, along with whatever programs you pursue, really leverage that network, because that's kind of what helped me in terms of my career journey when it came to deciding to pursue entrepreneurship. And I'm really excited to talk more about that later on throughout this panel. So fast forward to after graduating MTM, I did actually work at a digital health startup for a while called Wealth. And I'm really grateful for that experience as well, because that gave me a lot of insight as to the process of, what it takes to even run a company and how I would like to run my own company. And I also am a data analyst in training for my background. So when COVID hit, I wanted to still and I'd love to talk about how I learned to manage working on a company and also managing the day job. But I was also very interested in contributing to the COVID-19 pandemic. And during that time, I saw an opportunity to contribute my skills in data analysis and data management. And I joined the Mount Sinai Clinical and Translational Research Center as part of their infectious disease unit to help manage their clinical trials unit. And we did a lot of COVID-19 studies. And that also gave me a lot of insight in terms of how clinical research is applied when it comes to therapeutics. And being an entrepreneur, I realized that leveraging your network is very important. So in addition to that, I've also been finding time to help manage a mentor program for the Center for Biotechnology, which is affiliated with Stony Brook University, where we run mentor sessions for other entrepreneurs. And I found that to be also very helpful because I've learned so much just by interacting with other entrepreneurs. And that's pretty much a summary of my journeys thus far.
Thank you, Ashley. I want also to add that Ashley is our program alumna, and we are really glad and proud that we have such a great example of how you can run your business startup, because it's really something that you need to be a really strong person and creative to do so. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. Next question I want to ask Vladik and Ashley about how did you decide that you were ready to start a company? It's
Who's gonna go first?
Maybe you.
Okay. I don't think it was, in my case, it was a conscious decision. What happened was I tried to start 2 companies before Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals. Both were based on my work that I did at Salk Institute and also at Harvard. So one company that I tried to start was based on the discovery of so-called we call it TOGA, target-oriented whole genome amplification. There is even a patent application, you can read about it. And so in my mind was, I decided, I thought that, okay, it's a good technology that we developed. Why don't I try to start a company that would provide a service, to other companies doing this, whole genome amplification of a new type, trying to profile, some cells. It was a bad idea. I basically could not sell this idea to anyone, and in all honesty, the method did not work very well. So it was my first kind of attempt to start a company in the US when I moved to the US. Then I worked at Harvard, and I also worked for a company that, kind of infamous company. It was called Advanced Cell Technology. We were doing human cloning. We even published the first reprogramming of human genome using the human oocyte. So the idea was to basically create a new type of stem cells by nuclear transfer. It was a better idea, but unfortunately, Professor Yamanaka beat me in this exercise. he got a Nobel Prize for iPS cells. You probably know what iPS cells are all about. It's direct reprogramming using, four transcription factors. So again, it was kind of an inferior idea, but I was close. And then I worked for quite a while in hematopoiesis, trying to figure out how to create de novo hematopoietic stem cells or blood stem cells. And I discovered a new subset of cells that existed in adults, in adult mammals, that could potentially give rise to hematopoietic stem cells. And having experience with my father, who died of blood cancer, went through bone marrow transplant, and some other relatives, and knowing what is happening in the field, I thought that why don't I try to translate this new discovery into something practical that would help people. And that's how how the company was started. So the idea behind this company originally was to make bone marrow transplants safer and better and available for more people. So this idea, I went and I started the company, and we won this 43 North competition that gave us first money, and the company was born basically.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And what about Ashley? Do you want to share how you decided to start a company, like briefly?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Vlad, for sharing your story and also kind of going through like the different journey, because I think that resonated a lot with me. When we think about, forming a company and entrepreneurship, it's like people like to summarize like, oh yeah, it was an instant hit, but a lot of times you actually have to go through a lot of, I guess, like failures or just different pivots. And that's pretty much like what is very similar to us as Skinterest. So how we decided to form a company, my co-founder Tanny Robbins and I, it's actually, it's really interesting because I will say that it was kind of the reasoning for us even forming the company was because we were working on Skinterest as a passion project, which at the time was more clinical focus as like a clinical tool that we wanted to create to help people with chronic skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis. And we had this opportunity to extend our project from MTM to continue working with one of the companies I mentioned before. And so it's interesting because it was almost like a necessity for us, but I'm really glad that we had that opportunity in the first place to, organizationally form this company, because it basically launched us into this journey of entrepreneurship, where I realized that, being an entrepreneur is a very empowering position. I come from like a family where being a company founder, that's not something that's like a typical career that they'd encourage. And I think that was something that I was just really excited to just, venture literally into the world of entrepreneurship and running my own company. And it was definitely a lot to learn, just like when it comes to just the basic know-how of like managing company, all the relevant paperwork, which, I know a lot of people don't necessarily talk about because it's not like the exciting stuff when you create a company, when you're trying to work on an unmet need. But I think it's also important to recognize that that there's just so many different moving pieces. And I think as someone who really like prides myself in trying to learn as many different things as much as possible, I was excited about the opportunity to wear different hats and have ownership over something that I could proudly say, like, this is my project that I've been working on. And it's just like a whole journey, which I was really excited to do.
Thank you so much. Takeaway is like first steps not always easy, and the decisions and sometimes with failures, but you need to keep going on. This question is for
I'm sorry, I'd like
Yeah.
to add something. One of the things that always pushed me to start a company, it was I always wanted to be my own boss, and I always hated, not really hated, but I was resentful working for other people, and it probably comes from my experience because I was born and raised in the Soviet Union, where every kind of, that most, things that, the individuality was basically suppressed. And there was a very rigid hierarchy of people, and everyone was supposed to follow certain rules and be subjugated by, more experienced, better, quote unquote, people. So I always resented it, and I was always resentful. I served in the army for 2 years, and obviously I had to follow certain, rules and orders, and I hated it. So it always kind of pushed me toward being independent and do what I want to do, not something that someone would tell me to do.
Yeah, thank you for this addition. Maybe this is the most important reason. Sometimes we want to work for ourselves. Yes. Question to Sabriya. What guidance do you have for when people are ready to take the leap and found a company?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, maybe to speak to just briefly what Ashley and Vladislav said is, I don't know that there's ever going to be a 100% perfect time to start a company. There's always going to be reasons for you to say no, or to say, oh, I can do it later, or, oh, like not everything is in place. But I think that, if you are willing to put in a little bit of the work and put those things together, it will kind of come to fruition. I guess just to really say, like, and maybe, I don't know, Ashley, maybe Vlad also, like, I don't know that people wake up and say, I'm going to start a company because it's going to be so easy and this is like the perfect time to do it. What I will say from the investor standpoint, is that what we like to see is when companies or founders have taken the time to truly understand, what is the unmet need that they are solving for? How is the solution or the technology that they are building addressing that particular problem? And also not just, oh, I have this solution, but like, what is the actual company around that solution? Ashley has heard me say this probably too many times, but just because you have a really interesting and technically functional product doesn't mean that you have a business. It doesn't mean that you have a company. And so the more information, the more research, the more like one of the things we would do with the students is do these kind of like immersion activities of like really placing yourself in the space of where you are solving the problem and really understanding, is the solution that I have really addressing this unmet need? Because we work with founders at the earliest stages, we understand that they are not going to have all of the answers. But what I always appreciate when speaking to founders is when they say, I'm not sure, however, here's what I do know, or here's what I've experienced or witnessed, or here's what I've been able to glean from conversations with 10 people who have this problem, or because then it shows, that you've put in a little bit of the work to truly understand, kind of those three things I was kind of saying before about the program of like, what is the true unmet need I'm solving for? How is this solution that I've built meaningfully impacting that in like a measurable way? But then also, okay, now I have to start attaching dollars to this. How much is this going to cost? How many of these units can I sell? What is my model? What is my business model so that I can make money? I think I'm going to say an answer as an investor, and then I'm going to say an answer as like additionally like a person living in the world, which is that as an investor, we have to do these calculations of how is this going to return my fund, right? So if I give this company $1, I need to see $9 or $10 back to the fund in a certain period of time. I think I don't want to say like you should wait as long as possible to take venture capital dollars, but really asking yourself, when is the right time to pitch to investors is also very important. One thing that I do think is really important to say out loud as well is it is a luxury to start a company. It's a luxury to not take a salary for a little bit. It's a luxury to, I think both a luxury and a privilege, right? To say, I'm going to go out there and like do this thing that I really want to do. I also understand that people have to make various calculations. People have to pay rent. They need health insurance. Oftentimes you have to take care of other family members. And I say that to say, for us, like as a fund, we like to see people who have fully committed themselves to building the company, which means that they don't have other jobs, that, you know, they can say, you know, I can work on this all the time. And I know that is not always an option for individuals, just given the world that we live in. And so again, just thinking about how can you de-risk the technology, the idea, you know, as much as possible before making the jump to secure venture funding, I think is also really important.
Thank you so much. Great insights from Sabriya too. So it's time to take notes, and because I'm going to ask some questions about resources for startups. So what advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
I'll just quickly jump in just because I'm already unmuted, but I think the I-Corps program is a fantastic program to do the customer discovery. I mean, they essentially give you some funds and mentorship to understand if you are really solving an unmet need. We love when companies come to us and say, we've already done the I-Corps program. We understand kind of customer discovery. There's a ton of non-dilutive grants out there as well. I know New York is really pushing you know, more grants, more equity-free programs to support companies at the earliest stages. So that's one or a few that, you know, I would mention.
Great, thank you so much for sharing this resource. Maybe Ashley or Vladik have some addition to this?
I was going to echo exactly. I-Corps is a great program because I think it's as a business, when you're running your own company, you know, you might have an unmet need, but something that, you know, like just like Dr. Stukes is talking about, you know, you have to attach dollar signs to it. So I think that's an excellent program if you are interested. And they take in companies at all stages, especially if you're at just the ideation stage. So I highly recommend that program as well. I myself as a female founder, have found you know, various Slack communities where people are always constantly resource sharing with events and grant opportunities and whatnot to be helpful. And I'm happy to you know, share some of those Slacks. Like for example, FemBuild is a really great channel. Along with you know, there's like a whole list of apparently like other Slack channels within New York City that offer resources, you know, depending on whatever niche. So you could be like a female founder or whatever you identify as. They have a lot of resources. And I think that's like the wonderful thing about New York City is that because of the diversity, because there's so many people, there are, you know, ways to interact with people of different groups that you might similarly identify with that are constantly resource sharing. And I think that's one of the things that's I highly encourage is to leverage your network, especially in this current time. Your network is going to be a huge help for you and your goals.
Thank you so much.
I would like to say that, first of all, I personally never took any programs, never participated in any education. You know, but what I did personally, when I lived in Massachusetts, in Boston, actually in Melrose, it's like I said, it's, you know, one of the towns around Boston. I lived in a old house, and I had a basement, and at different times I was employed at Harvard, and you know, at a company, this advanced cell technology, and then there were periods when I was not employed, but I created a lab for myself in the basement. And you would be surprised that on eBay, even at that time, I could buy, for example, I bought an MJR engine, like with 496 well, you know, PCR for like next to nothing. And I had a hood, and I convinced, you know, a gas company to deliver gases there. And I had my lab, and I constantly was, you know, trying to create something. So the company is not at least from my experience, it's not like you go out and you decide, okay, I create a company, I go and take a few courses or participate in a program, and eventually maybe I have an idea and, I create a company, and then eventually I start, maybe, pitching someone, or maybe not. No, at least in my case, I could not live without doing it constantly. It didn't matter what, where I was employed, where I lived, how much money I had. It's just when you have something that burns inside of you, and makes you do things, that's when you start creating a company, because that's already a company. When you make something constantly, when you cannot live without it.
Yeah.
If you feel that this is something inside of you, that's the right time, and you are ready. Everything else is a technicality.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. We're running out of time. That's why I want to ask a last question and then go to our open our Q&A, because we already have some questions there. So my last question, I want to ask Sabriya, what unique benefits does NYC offer for starting a life science company? So I think you would talk.
Yeah,
But
I'll be quick about this because I see some of the questions and I think they're really good ones to answer. I think though I do have a unique perspective in that when I was in grad school, there was no incubator really, there was no accelerator programs, there were minimal funds supporting early stage life science companies. There were minimal programs in grad school institutions that were supporting academic spinouts in the way that there are now. And so I think New York City, building a company in New York, you benefit from, yes, how dense the island is or the 5 boroughs are, but how many more resources, people who are part of the ecosystem that there weren't, 5, 10 years ago. I think both at the city and the state level, they are putting not just actual dollars, but, like infrastructure programs in place to really support. So I'm definitely a New York or nowhere kind of person. I also think what's been so lovely about being in the biotech entrepreneurship space for so long is what I kind of just started the conversation with, which is it's so wonderful to be on a panel with Ashley after being her teacher, but then also, like I said, just a few weeks ago, I met Vladislav and I think I still have your card in my purse actually with like a note to like email you and follow up. I think everyone is very welcoming here. Everyone is, here's how I did it. It might not necessarily work for you, but here's like what I did. So maybe you can emulate that. People are always really helpful. And I can't say enough good things. I mean, obviously always room for improvement. New York is a very expensive place to live. There's other things that, can make it really challenging. But I think because there has now been this critical mass of people doing it, no matter what kind of community you are trying to find, you will always find people that can be supportive of you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for all your insights. They are very important, and I think our audience will really get a lot of information, and they will use it for their startup ideas. I want to open now our Q&A session. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and I will ask the first question here from Pramchandala. First of all, we have how inspiring. We are happy to hear that. How did you guys overcome the procrastination phase where you recognized the unmet need, know how to go ahead solving it, but did not do it? And when you decide to start, what was your first step? For example, staggered registration, the LLC. Who wants to answer this question?
I'm happy to kind of share that initial journey for us. And I'm also happy to kind of shout out my co-founder, Tanny Robbins, who I think is on the call, because I think that's pretty much was a big help in terms of us getting over the procrastination phase as you're asking about, because I think just like Vlad was talking about, when you have that kind of burning passion, you really feel strongly about, the topic, the unmet need that you're trying to create your company around. That is a huge motivating factor, and having, like someone else with you along this journey was also a huge help, because we basically were, this was our first time just forming a company, running a company, and learning about just the process. And I know you asked about even what does registering a company look like. And so because it was also very new to both of us, we were both just going to a lot of info sessions. And I think that's a great thing about New York City, is that they have all these resources where they're most of them are usually often free, where you can learn about how to form an LLC, how to form a C Corp, what are 83B elections. They have a lot of pro bono office hours with lawyers where you can ask your questions. And I think that's another thing about, the entrepreneurial mindset is, you get very into like coming up with creative ways to find what the resources that you need to accomplish whatever ABC is. And so it's another exercise in entrepreneurship, because you're, as an entrepreneur, you're gritty, you're low resource, so you try to maximize the resources that you can. And having someone along the way is great. And you might hear this a lot in entrepreneurship. They'll say like your co-founder is a very important part of, the company piece. And sometimes they'll say you're like practically married to your co-founder. And I always joke, because I did recently also get married, but I had to tell my husband like, hey, I have Tandy, who's also like my other someone I'm also married to. But it's true, like you will go through so much. And I think having like an organic relationship where you can also just like talk about other, maybe non-work things that makes it more enjoyable, helped us along the way for our entrepreneurship journey as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next question. I think this question would be the best for Vladik. Could you explain to us what operational excellence looks like for your company, and feel free to talk about important roles that may not require much experience in STEM, but are essential pieces that help run and scale your business?
This is a very loaded question, because I don't have any operational excellence myself. I learn on the fly, and our company, we are 15 people right now. We're in the clinic. We also manufacture our own CAR T cells. We established the quality system. I'm not gonna list all this stuff, but basically everyone who works for the company is somehow a scientist. We have a few undergraduates who have only undergraduate degree, but most people have either master's or PhD, and they do pretty much everything. We have an AI expert with a PhD who sometimes has to clean floor, around our clean rooms. And between checking the output of of the neural network he runs. So I don't think I can answer this question directly. I don't know what even this operational excellence is all about. All I can say that what I see people, what makes people successful in biotech, especially in a startup, in a small company, is a complete dedication and ability to learn as fast as humanly possible, and be willing to learn and change all the time. That's, in my mind, what I would call operational excellency.
Yeah, actually, if I can jump in, because I think that there's another question in the chat that talks about, if you are non-technical, how do you it says, how do you find an idea or passion to work on and potentially transform into a startup? So, I mean, I think that there is a longer conversation to be had around like what people even mean when they say technical versus non-technical, because you're going to need it's like an all hands on deck kind of operation. at the start of it. So whether you have a STEM background or whether you have a marketing background or whether you have a communications background, like all of that is going to be needed at the earliest stage. What I think you should actually just think about is like, what specific skill set can I bring to this company? And how can I make sure that, you know, kind of as Vlad was saying too, like, how can I make sure that I'm also adaptable? You're at the earliest stage, there's like 2 or 3 people and you're not going to know everything. So it's, you know, to what Ashley was saying, it's like either how can you learn a new skill on your own or how can you work with others to figure out like what are those gaps that I can fill in the team. Because I will also say again, from an investor standpoint, when we take a look at a team like holistically, we are going to look at, well, I'll just give you an example. Like this is a robotics company, but no one on the team has like biomedical engineering or mechanical engineering background. Like that's going to be a little bit of a red flag. And so if you can say, okay, we understand that we're lacking in this skill, but here's how we're going to fill that gap. Here's, you know, how we're going to make sure that, you know, these questions get answered or these milestones get hit. So again, I think, you know, as a former operations director myself, I don't know that if you would have asked me even before I took the job, if I knew what an operations director was, like, could I do that job? I just knew, I knew the skill set that I was bringing to the company, and I knew that they were willing to take a chance on me to develop and refine that skill set, in addition to being flexible and adaptable enough to doing certain other things. So I think that as you all are thinking about whatever your next steps are, whether that's starting a company or whether that's being employee number 2 at a startup or just finding a job, you really have to position yourself as, here's what I know, and I know I'm very good at. Here's what I don't know, but here's how I know I can fill that gap if I, you know, if I need to do that. And then I think, you know, that's how you kind of position yourself to be the best candidate for any role.
Thank you so much for your answer. It's really detailed. Another question from Joseph. Great insights, everyone. I'm curious to hear, how did you all learn all of the business knowledge needed to actually build a new company? It's an interesting question because sometimes we don't have that background, business background.
I'm happy to share my experience. So as I mentioned earlier, when we just started the initial journey of just informing a company and all that, like going to these workshops that were available in New York City, where they actually talked about like forming an LLC, and then, you know, what are business taxes like? What are important metrics that, you know, most companies look at? I think that was really helpful for me because I started getting more into the business mindset. And, you know, when you're coming from, you know, a scientific and technical background, sometimes it's easy to really get in the weeds of the technicalities of things. But when I apply myself going to these workshops, I remind myself that there is still a monetary or business need that I have to always attach to the company, to the unmet need that I'm trying to solve. And I think that was really important because it really shifted the way I initially envisioned Skinterest with my co-founder. And it's something that is often constantly evolving, right? And I think like Dr. Stukes was saying, like it's important that you identify your strengths and I guess deltas, and also figure out like what are your unknown knowns, right? What are you still needing to figure out? And I think that's another reason why it's important to just leverage your network, your resources. New York City has a fantastic array of resources that you can tap into. And I think that's a great way for you to just like fill in that gap of the things that you don't know when it comes to the business application. And something that you will always constantly learn. And I also want to just normalize failure or maybe not meeting your metrics, because that is very common in the business world. So common, like investors will have a huge stock portfolio of different companies, just, you know, and you'll have your own risk threshold. Like it's normal to not always meet whatever metrics. That's something that I want to also like emphasize.
I would also like to add that forming an LLC or corp is not really necessary from the very beginning. This is not something that is required. What is required, based on my experience, is to be able to make something. So you first make something, even if it's a, you know, a stupid emulation of whatever you want to make down the road. And this stupid emulation somehow works and demonstrates what you expect to get like in 3 years down the road or in 6 months, depends on the company, depends on your idea. This is much more important than to register LLC and know how to make a spreadsheet and show, to analyze P&L. So the bottom line is you don't need an MBA. MBA is, I would say, it's just basically not necessary. What is necessary is to be able to make something and to know what you want to make. And you will, for sure, making this thing, you will learn a lot, you will fail, and eventually, if you are persistent enough, you will make it. That's the beginning of the company. That's how all great companies were started.
Yeah, I think just like to emphasize that is like, don't quit your day job just because you have an idea. Like if you can, like Ashley has done before, and I'm sure others, if you can say like, well, if I have a full-time job, like how can I actually use what I'm doing in my full-time job to also support what I'm doing over here? How can I get as many free resources, free conversations? It's sort of all coming back to me, the conversations I was having both with Ashley and Tandy when I was in the program, but I feel like I remember one thing I did tell them was like, the advantage that you have as a student are more people are willing to talk to you for free than at any point in your life. Because once you say you have a company, then it's like, okay, well, here's my rate, here's my consulting rate, or here's, how much I would charge you, whatever. So ask as many questions as possible and open the conversation with, I am a student, I'm still figuring this out. And a lot of people, I think, are more willing to, now, of course, be mindful and don't abuse that privilege. But, I just think when you're starting off, don't make that big leap until you really know that you've got something, whether that's a proof of concept, whether that's just even a working prototype, no matter how maybe janky it looks. And I think that also helps inform whether or not you've got a real company that people can invest in.
Well, thank you so much. It's a lot of information today, and we have so many questions. We tried to answer most of them. Sorry if we were not able to answer all of your questions, but again, feel free to reach out to us through internship at upperweststrategies.com email, and we will try to also send the email. And also feel free to connect with our panelists if you have important questions to ask them. And I wanted to thank you everyone again, our dear panelists. You were so helpful today. I assume that this topic was really interesting for our participants because we saw so many questions about startups. And thank you very much again, and have a nice evening.
Actually, sorry, before we cut off, can I say one thing? Because I hope it echoes what Vlad and Ashley were saying, and also maybe some of the uncertainty that I'm hearing in some of the questions about like, what should I do? Or is this the right thing? And even imposter syndrome, like, I don't want to be so glib about it, but it is like everything is sort of made up. Like you can just kind of do the thing and see if it works. I think to Ashley's point, and maybe one last thing I'll leave everyone with is, and maybe it is because I'm a scientist, I do view so many things that I've done in my life as an experiment. Whether or not that's a good thing or not, will TBD. But what I mean by that is nothing is truly final. You can try a thing, and then if it doesn't work out, you just try something else. Sometimes I also think if you learn that you don't like doing the thing, that is almost as important as learning that you do love doing the thing. Because I think people have this idea about how glamorous entrepreneurship can be. But it isn't until they actually try it that they're like, oh, wait a minute, actually, maybe I want to do something completely different. So to me, everything is just data. Everything is just learning more and more about how you want to be in the world. And that helps inform like the next thing you do. So for all the individuals who are saying like, well, what should I do? Or is this the right thing? You just need to try and have a little bit of faith in yourself, with the appropriate guardrails, of course. And if you didn't like it, make some other decisions until you kind of find the thing that works.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sabriya.